the burning of Teldrassil. Aside from the Sundering, possibly the worst event in all of Night Elven history, and the largest fire Azeroth had ever seen, Night Elves lost their home as well as a large portion of their population. However, despite the Night Warrior retaking some of the lands and the battle for Lordaeron, are they ever going to get direct revenge, or will this just be a tragic moment left in the past? Brought to you by Gamevo.com. Get the cheapest game time on the market, as well as other Warcraft products. Check out the link in the description below. Long ago, the Night Elven Empire was the strongest in all of Azeroth, and until the arrival of the Orcs, they were quite a dominant force on Kalimdor. However, as soon as the Horde started expanding and creating new settlements, they began losing more and more territory. Azshara, Ashenvale, and almost every other zone they had soon became a battleground and in most cases was lost to the Horde. It really culminated when Sylvanas decided to preemptively strike and really cause some damage. Unexpectedly, she took over Darkshore and then catapulted Teldrassil into a gigantic bonfire. Not only did the capital of the Night Elves, Darnassus, burn to the ground, but they lost a large number of civilians. Sure, some managed to escape, but the damage was significant. Worst of all, it wasn't just the lives lost, there were many ancient protectors there, trees, spirits, and Darnassus was literally the center of Night Elven culture. The only positive side is that Darnassus is relatively a newer city, around the same age as Orgrimmar, so it wasn't like some 10,000-year-old capital with millennia worth of culture was destroyed, but still, Night Elves within the decade became really concentrated around Darnassus and turned it into a center. In response to this horrific attack, the Alliance sieged Undercity and attacked Sylvanas, but this was an entirely different scenario. Even though the Alliance won, it was a Pyrrhic victory. They didn't really get much of anything. Most of the civilians were evacuated beforehand, and Sylvanas didn't really even care about them that much, and she totally expected this and purged the city herself, and I'm pretty sure they moved all the important stuff out to minimize damage. This is exactly why it is so different. The Night Elves didn't get a large heads up, and despite evacuating some citizens, it was a terrible blow to them. Not really as bad as the fall of Kortalas for the Blood Elves, for example, but pretty close to it. Now, Tyrande got the blessing in the dark side of Elune, and she became the Night Warrior, retaking some territory and killing one of the Valkyries that were crucial to Sylvanas. This did sting, but to a much lesser extent. Ultimately, the Horde was betrayed by Sylvanas, and the Alliance won the conflict, mostly, but again, almost a useless victory. Of course, the story isn't over, as it is pretty obvious the arc with Sylvanas is going to continue in the Shadowlands, and the Tyrande will play a role, sort of like in Illidan Sargeras parallel, but most of us can agree that this is a really weak form of revenge. What did the Night Elves really get? They lost their home and people, and in turn, they took back some territory they already had, and the Alliance sort of symbolically attacked Undercity to console them. Well, in my opinion, I don't really see the Night Elves ever getting any serious form of revenge. It is pretty safe to say that the entire conflict was a tragedy for everyone involved and a setup for a new expansion, and that the Night Elves just got the short end of the stick. The Horde was ultimately just as manipulated as the Alliance by Sylvanas and the Jailer, thrown into a pointless conflict, and I don't really see the point of Alliance destroying Orgrimmar or causing the Horde proportional harm. Of course, retaking their territories on Kalimdor and decreasing Horde influence would do them a lot of justice, but with Anduin as the king, I don't really see that happening. See, if it was Varian, he would most likely hold a grudge and would be all set on annihilating the Horde, as he already wanted to do so after the siege of Orgrimmar. At this point, it is very likely that everyone will just become friends again and that we will unite to face the Jailer and Sylvanas. Of course, this is for the best, and I'm pretty sure everyone will be aware of that and will hold grudges, but if the Horde and the Alliance started fighting again while this threat is happening, like this gigantic Shadowlands threat that is pushed into our face, there is no doubt going to be a lot of trouble if we have factions battling each other. The only reasonable way of Night Elves ever getting revenge for the burning of Teldrassil is somehow in the Shadowlands. Possibly we will see the spirits of the fallen Night Elves. They might get resurrected in some way, or they might just forgive their enemies after we save them from the maw. Nonetheless, even with this, death to a Night Elf is a terrible thing. They live for a really long time, so it wouldn't be the same for a human where in like 30 or 40 years he would be dead anyway. Now, in terms of territory, I don't really see any justice really happening, as we already knew Battle for Azeroth was there to just consolidate the power on the continents for each faction. Blizzard says that Tyrande got her revenge, and it is pretty obvious that she will be seeking more in the Shadowlands against Sylvanas, but in terms of the Night Elves, as people, I don't really see much happening, and as sad as that is, it might be for the best in terms of saving the world. Thank you for watching. Check out if the deadlines will continue to be created by clicking on the screen, and check out my second channel, Lordaeron's Academy, for videos on real-world history and science. See you next time.